Eli Turner had spent most of his life riding through lonely stretches of land, moving cattle from one dusty horizon to another. For years he dreamed of owning a place that was truly his, a quiet valley with water, grass, and enough space to build the life he wanted. He saved every dollar he earned, refused every night of drinking his friends invited him to, and stayed focused on one goal: finding a piece of land where he could settle down and build something honest. That dream began to feel real the day he found the valley in Arizona territory. The moment he rode in, he felt something settle in his chest. The place was wide, calm, and green in a way that felt like a promise. A stream ran through it, gentle and clear. Cottonwood trees grew along the water, shaking softly in the wind. If a cowboy ever hoped for a perfect spot, this was it. But the valley was not empty. Smoke from small cooking fires rose quietly near the far side. Handmade structures stood near the trees, and horses grazed on the grass. Eli realized he had entered land watched and loved by Apache people. He had heard stories, some good and some not, but he believed in walking with respect. So instead of turning around or pushing forward without permission, he dismounted, raised his empty hands, and waited. 2 Apache men approached him calmly. They did not draw weapons or shout. They studied him with careful eyes, as if trying to decide what kind of man he was. Eli introduced himself slowly, making sure not to seem threatening, and asked if he could speak to their elders about the land. The men exchanged glances, speaking to one another in their own language before agreeing to guide him. The meeting was quiet but firm. The elders explained that the valley had belonged to their families for generations. It held memories, stories, and resting places of ancestors. Trading it was not something they considered lightly. Eli understood and did not try to force anything. He expressed his respect and simply asked them to think about it. If they ever wished to trade or share, he would be ready to listen. He rode away unsure what the future held, but he didn't want to cause trouble. He camped nearby, not too close to be disrespectful, but close enough to watch the land he hoped for. The next morning changed everything. Eli heard a loud cry and turned to see a young Apache woman struggling to control a frightened horse. The animal kicked, twisted, and tried to break free. She held the reins with both hands, desperately trying to guide it, but the horse was too strong. Without thinking twice, Eli dashed forward. He grabbed the bridle, leaned his body weight against the animal, and calmed it slowly, with steady hands and a calm voice. After a few tense moments, the horse settled. The woman stood frozen, breathing hard. She was young, maybe 19, with long dark hair braided neatly down her back and shy brown eyes that did not rise to meet his. She thanked him softly, speaking a few English words. Eli nodded politely and stepped away, worried he might have broken some rule by helping her without permission. His worry was not wrong. His action brought unexpected consequences. Later that day, Apache warriors arrived at his camp. Eli felt his heart jump at the sight. But their faces were not angry. They simply told him the elders wanted to see him immediately. Eli followed, unsure if he had done something helpful or something wrong. Inside the circle of elders, he saw the young woman sitting quietly, eyes lowered, wrapped in a blanket. She looked even more nervous than he felt. The chief, a man with calm strength in his voice, explained that according to their tradition, when an unmarried woman is rescued from danger by a man, it creates a question of honor. People might talk, her reputation could be harmed. The only way to protect her from suspicion was marriage. Eli felt his stomach drop. Marriage? He had only wanted to help someone in trouble. He never imagined such a responsibility would fall on him. He glanced at the young woman Sani. They called her and saw how tense she was. She had not chosen this any more than he had. Still, the chief's voice remained steady. The tribe believed Eli had acted honorably. They offered him the valley he wanted, but they expected him to become Sani's husband in return. It was not a trade of a woman for land. It was a cultural duty, a way of shaping peace, trust, and respect between 2 different worlds. Eli stood silently for a long moment. Walking away would insult them. Refusing could hurt Sani's place in her own tribe, and accepting meant stepping into a life he had never prepared for. In the end, compassion guided him more than anything. He agreed softly, saying he would do his best to protect her and respect their ways. The ceremony that followed was simple. A few quiet words, a small fire, an elder blessing their future, and Sani standing beside him with trembling hands. Eli kept his voice gentle, sensing how overwhelmed she was. When it was over, the tribe led them to a small wooden cabin at the edge of the valley, built earlier for newly married couples. Sani walked inside first, slow and uncertain. Eli followed, removing his hat out of habit. The room was small, 2 chairs, a table, a single sleeping mat, and a few blankets. A dim lantern glowed from the corner. It felt quiet, almost too quiet. Sani sat on the edge of the mat, still wrapped in the blanket she had worn at the ceremony. She kept her eyes down, barely breathing. Eli could feel how nervous she was, and he didn't blame her. She had been raised with strict traditions, had never spoken much English, and now she was married to a man she had met only hours ago. He decided to speak softly, telling her she had nothing to fear. He explained he would not rush anything, and that they could take their time getting to know each other. She listened but said little, only nodding once or twice. Her hands trembled slightly around the blanket. Eli sat in one of the chairs, trying to give her space. The air was thick with awkwardness, but also with a gentle kind of respect. He was aware of how different their worlds were, her upbringing, her language, her customs, and all he wanted was to make her feel safe. As the night grew colder, the wind brushed against the cabin walls. Sani quietly placed a small bowl of food on the table, the meal she had prepared earlier. When Eli thanked her, she gave a shy, quick nod. They ate silently, the distance between them, slowly feeling less uncomfortable. When it was time to rest, Eli stood up, stretched, and moved toward the wooden bench near the door. Sani looked confused, pointing at the sleeping mat, as if reminding him it was the proper place for a husband. Eli shook his head gently and said he would sleep on the bench tonight. He didn't want her to feel pressured or afraid. Her eyes widened slightly with surprise. She watched him settle on the bench, pulling his coat over himself to stay warm. She had expected someone loud, someone demanding, someone rough, like the stories she had been told about white cowboys. But Eli was the opposite, quiet, patient, and respectful. He fell asleep slowly, listening to the soft crackle of the lantern. When the first light of dawn touched the cabin, Sani woke and saw Eli still sleeping on the cold bench. Without thinking, she rose quietly, took her own blanket, and draped it gently over him. It was a small act, but it carried a beginning of trust. Their first night as strangers sharing the same roof ended not with fear, but with a fragile step toward understanding 2 people bound by unexpected tradition. Learning how to face a new life together, slowly and gently, one moment at a time. Eli woke to the soft sound of footsteps moving around the small cabin. For a moment, he forgot where he was, until the smell of roasting corn reached him, and the blanket draped across his chest reminded him of the gentle act from the night before. He looked up and saw Sani kneeling near the fire pit, carefully preparing breakfast. Her movements were quiet and precise, as if she wanted to avoid disturbing him. She did not notice he was awake until he sat up, rubbing the stiffness from his neck. The wooden bench had done his back no favors, but he did not complain. When Sani realized he was awake, she lowered her eyes shyly and pushed a small bowl toward him. Eli thanked her with a soft voice, and she nodded, but remained quiet. The atmosphere was still unsure, but the tension from the previous night had softened. There was something warmer in the air now, a small understanding beginning to grow between them. Eli ate slowly, watching Sani from the corner of his eye. She was delicate in her movements, almost too careful, as if she was afraid to make a mistake. He wanted to ease her fear, but he didn't know how. Their worlds were too far apart. Their languages only matched in small pieces. Yet, for some reason, he felt responsible for her comfort, more than the situation demanded. After breakfast, Eli stepped outside to breathe in the morning air. The valley stretched before him, silent and green. He could hear birds calling in the trees and the soft flow of the stream nearby. This land could become a beautiful home, if he learned how to use it well. But before anything, he wanted to understand Sani better. She was now part of his life, even if the marriage had come suddenly. A few minutes later, Sani stepped outside, holding a small leather bag. She motioned for him to follow her toward the stream. Eli hesitated, unsure what she intended, but he followed anyway, keeping a respectful distance. When they reached the water, Sani knelt and dipped the bag inside, filling it. She gestured for him to do the same. Eli understood she was teaching him their morning chores. They worked together silently. Eli collected firewood, while Sani gathered herbs from the edge of the water. She pointed to different leaves and said their names in Apache. He repeated each word, stumbling through the pronunciation, causing her to smile softly. It was the first time he had seen her smile with genuine warmth instead of nervous politeness. That small smile gave him courage. He tried to say a few more words, mixing English with the new vocabulary she taught him. His attempts were clumsy, but she appreciated the effort. Slowly, the gap between them began to shrink. When they returned to the cabin, the sun was higher, and some tribe members approached to check on them. They greeted Eli with nods, showing respect. But they spoke mostly to Sani in their language. She responded calmly and occasionally glanced at Eli to reassure him. The tribe seemed satisfied that Eli was treating her well, and they left without concern. Later, Eli decided to explore the land. He told Sani he wanted to check the stream, the soil, and the grazing areas. She immediately followed him. According to her traditions, a new wife was expected to guide her husband through the land and help him understand the area. Eli didn't want her to feel forced to follow him, but she looked determined. So he let her come along. They walked for a long time, moving through the valley. Sani showed him spots with strong water flow, places where deer often visited, and areas where the soil was rich enough to grow small crops. Eli listened carefully. Her knowledge was deep, shaped by years of learning about her home. It struck him that she was not only gentle, she was wise in ways he had never been. At noon, they rested under the shade of a tall cottonwood tree. Sani handed him a piece of bread she had packed earlier. Eli shared some dried meat from his saddlebag. They ate quietly, but the silence felt more comfortable now, like two people simply sharing a moment rather than strangers. After they finished eating, Sani gathered a few smooth stones and arranged them in a little pattern. She pointed to one stone and said her name, Sani. Then she pointed to another and said, Eli. Eli understood she was trying to show him something, a way to bridge their languages. She moved the stones around to explain simple ideas. Home, water, sleep, food. Eli repeated each word slowly, and she corrected him gently when he mispronounced something. They both ended up laughing when he mixed up the words for water and tree. As the day passed, the sun began to dip toward the horizon. They returned to the cabin, carrying small bundles of herbs and stones Sani wanted to keep. The cabin felt less lonely now. The silence was not heavy the way it had been last night. Instead, it felt like two people learning the rhythm of each other's presence. Eli set about fixing a loose hinge on the cabin door, while Sani prepared a simple evening meal. She worked with calm focus, humming softly under her breath. He listened quietly, realizing he liked the sound of her voice. He also realized how much care she put into each small action. Even though they had been married only a day, she treated their new home as something that needed gentle attention. After dinner, they sat near the small fire inside the cabin. Eli tried to make conversation, speaking slowly so Sani could understand. He told her about the ranches he worked on, the horses he trained, the lonely nights on the trail. She listened with quiet interest, her eyes following every movement he made. When he finished, she told him a few things in her soft English stories about her childhood, the games she played with her cousins, the stories her grandmother told her about stars and spirits. Her words were simple, but the meaning behind them felt rich. As night settled, the cabin grew colder. Eli prepared the bench again, intending to sleep there like he had the night before. But this time, Sonny stopped him. She placed a hand on the blanket she had given him and shook her head. She gestured toward the mat, inviting him to sleep on the warmer bedding. Eli hesitated, not wanting to frighten her or misunderstand her intention, but she shook her head again, her expression firm but gentle. It was her way of thanking him for the respect he had shown. It was also her first step toward trusting him fully. Eli accepted her offer, but lay down carefully on the far side of the mat, leaving plenty of space. Sonny lay on her own side, wrapped in her blanket, facing the opposite direction. They did not speak, but the silence held no fear. Instead, it felt peaceful, like two people slowly finding a place in each other's worlds. In the middle of the night, Eli heard Sonny shift slightly. He opened his eyes and saw her awake, looking at the ceiling as if deep in thought. After a moment, she turned her head slightly toward him. Her voice was quiet but steady as she said his name, practicing the English sound again. He responded softly, and she said her own name afterward, almost like she wanted to make sure he understood they were tied together now, not by force but by the choices they were making each moment. Eli whispered a reassuring reply, telling her they would take things slowly and build their life step by step. She nodded, her eyes softening. For the first time since the marriage began, she did not look uncertain. She looked hopeful. The next morning would bring new challenges, learning the land, understanding each other's worlds, finding ways to blend two different cultures into one home. But as they lay quietly in the early hours, neither one felt alone anymore. They were still learning, still awkward, still unsure, but the distance between them had turned into something gentler, something warmer. What began as an unexpected marriage bound by tradition was slowly becoming a bond shaped by patience, respect, and small acts of kindness. It was not the life Eli planned, nor the one Sonny imagined, but it was becoming a life they both felt ready to walk into together.